Last time we talked about how we started learning English and how we've improved our speaking skills. Today, we'll continue our discussion focusing on listening.
That's right.
Listening is essential. Nowadays, with platforms like Netflix, we watch a lot of shows. We used to do that too, right?
Absolutely. We watched a lot.
Can each of us name one show that was really helpful for improving English?
I can start. Back in my early 20s, there were no video streaming services. I watched all 10 seasons of Friends. A friend of mine burned them to DVDs, and I couldn't stop watching.
Yeah, sitcoms can be tricky humor-wise, especially culturally.
Definitely. The first time I watched it, it wasn't that funny, but I watched it anyway, thinking it was good for learning. The second time, it became funnier, and I started appreciating the humor. I even looked up things online related to the show. I loved searching for extra information, so I found a friend's script online and downloaded it.
Yeah, we watched a lot.
Yeah, I even downloaded all the episodes in MP4 format. I listened to them for 10 to 20 minutes before bed.
Wow, so the key is to listen to something interesting, even if it doesn't sound perfect. So repeated focused listening helps you pick up expressions.
Yeah, Friends has everyday English dialogues, and even though I didn't use everything immediately, I observed it as input.
I actually didn't put much effort into listening. My focus was more on speaking. Listening and reading are now passive skills. We observe them naturally over time. Somebody once challenged themselves to listen to English 24 hours, 7 days for 3 months, only seeing and hearing English. They said it helped improve their listening. I've always enjoyed speaking English. I memorized my textbooks in high school and college and listened to tapes repeatedly. Pop songs didn't help much. You have to actively pick up phrases. Looking back, I think I observed English by simply surrounding myself with it.
It's like background learning.
Yes, I left it around me, ensuring I didn't forget it. Isn't that a form of listening? When I'm into something, I listen to it repeatedly. In the old days, I recorded songs onto cassette tapes. For instance, I loved Whitney Houston's Run to You. I recorded 120 minutes of it, just that one song. So you mentioned Friends earlier, and I loved it. I had some favorite shows, and now when I look at it, it's like I didn't watch them repeatedly. I watched them until the series ended. But with similar themes, you find a lot of repetitions. So even if you're not rewatching the same thing, you encounter common expressions. I don't set a strict deadline for watching TV series. I remember hearing it, and it's the same now. I did it subconsciously, and living in a foreign country exposed me to more input. In graduate school, I had conference calls with native speakers, and I was often the only Asian there.
For me, it was quite similar. I focused on Friends earlier, and now I consciously do it in Korea and abroad. Back then, I didn't talk to Koreans at all, so I did something similar with radio alarms we used to have on our bedside tables. It played English channels in the morning. And even on TV, I didn't have Korean channels where I lived, so I naturally tuned into English shows, news, and programs.
Now, when I talk to students, I emphasize the importance of listening. Focused listening is essential during test or intensive work, but casual exposure while doing something else is valuable too. You might be interested in something, pick up a word or two, and connect it with previous discussions, which reinforces your learning.
So it's about creating an immersive environment even if you're not abroad. There is so much content and many ways to do it. Choose content that aligns with your interests.
Absolutely. If it's too challenging, focus on content related to your major or something you'll write about. I often have students ask me what to listen to when they want intense listening practice. I suggest listening to content that's slightly above their current skill level, like +1. For example, if your skill is at level 3, listen to content at level 4. That's where the real learning happens.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's why it's so important to judge yourself first.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Somebody, I don't remember exactly where it came from, said when we speak a foreign language at a kindergarten level, don't think of it as an ego thing. Think of it as going back to childhood. He said you have to start somewhere.
That's right. I mean, how can a 7-year-old give a speech? It's natural because that's what it is. Shyness doesn't last long, especially for adults.
Yeah.
It's quicker for adults because the language structure is already there and we have more knowledge.
And we are good at memorizing.
Yes, babies can't memorize, but adults improve faster. I think it's foolish to stay silent due to a little embarrassment.
Exactly. Listening, like Dia mentioned earlier, is essential, but in your day-to-day life, there is another aspect, intensive listening combined with extensive exposure. They complement each other, just like reading.
Exactly.
So now let's switch to reading.
Reading, like listening, is more under your control and it's passive, so you can do it at your own pace.
Yeah, you can read at your own pace, but a lot of digital distractions keep us from reading.
Yes, that's why many people don't read as much, even though it's more comfortable than listening.
People barely read in Korean these days.
Yeah, as adults, we need to read well-written text to refine our language skills. Good writing is often found in literary works.
Because good writing constantly evolves and gets refined.
Exactly. So don't just read anything. Focus on high-quality writing, such as literary works. You can also explore print materials like newspapers and economic journals, which we have a more refined language. Or you can filter the vocabulary you want to learn from them.
Yeah, I remember when I was in college and ambitious, there was so much material to read.
It's challenging.
I allocated time in the morning, like half an hour to an hour, to select and read articles. I tend to read headlines because they are more accessible.
True, especially when they cover topics related to Korea or current issues. It's easier to understand and see how they express it in English. Don't limit yourself to Korean content. Explore English news, newspapers, and materials with a background you're familiar with.
Exactly. Because reading something in English that aligns with your background and interests enhances your comprehension. Anyways, back in college, I took an extensive reading course and received a box of these graded readers from the native teacher. And you choose one to take home and read. I read one every week, and then there is an evaluation sheet with a bar like this. You highlight the pages you read, and if you read over 2,000 pages, you get an A.
I bet that makes you competitive.
I aim to read more than the other students.
It feels a bit like a competition.
Yeah, it's like a gradual build-up. What I like about this class is that one student reads and then we check if the student really read it or just lied. Every week after finishing a book, you have to write a one-page summary in English. You write the summary by hand and add 3 or 4 lines of reflection at the bottom. Then you pass it on, and the next time you receive feedback, usually focusing on grammar. And doing this weekly reduces the fear of writing because you practice it regularly.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, having this routine makes me want to read more and level up.
Exactly. As you mentioned, finishing one book is challenging until you reach the last cover. But once you do, progress becomes exponential.
Right, it accelerates.
The second book is faster, the third even more so, and it keeps compounding. Reading is the activity that has the most tangible impact.
Yeah, I hope learners don't have an ego about what they read. You don't have to start with great literature. It's about learning the language, not just the content. So you may know the content, but not the language, so it's much faster. You need to overcome the initial embarrassment for a few months, as I mentioned earlier.
Exactly, put it down.
If you're interested in something or if there's a movie or a TV show based on a book, it's okay to watch it first and then read the book in English. Having some background knowledge helps with extensive reading. Even if you don't understand a few words, you can guess their meaning.
While it may be less accurate, it allows you to read with speed and fluency. Eventually, this leads to reading becoming alphabet, as we discussed earlier.
Yes.
You mentioned finding reading journals helpful. Speaking of which, our series includes journal writing.
Yeah, we have journal writing on our channel. If you revisit the academic writing series as well, you'll find assignments for every topic. You can still write about a topic and share it with us for feedback.
And you can turn in your journal anytime.
Journal writing is as helpful as a book report, but people often have a filter when expressing their feelings. They wonder how honest they can be. Journaling is personal, it's just for you, and there is no pressure. For me, writing in English is the best medium to express myself without that pressure.
Exactly. When you think about it, write it down and visualize it. You're refining your thoughts because your mind filters them. And if I'm writing informal slang in my journal, I think, oh, I shouldn't. It's a bit embarrassing when you revisit it later.
Yeah, but you don't write to look at it again, but you also don't want your diary to become an emotional dumping ground.
That's true. Eventually, you transition to using more refined language and vocabulary.
Especially when you're journaling, you have something you want to express, and if it's not coming out right, you feel frustrated and keep searching for the right words.
Eventually, journaling and writing become intertwined. While reading, you come across words you want to use. So you pick them up and they find their way into your journal or other writing. It's a cycle involving reading, speaking, writing, and listening. It all comes full circle. There's no one directional path. It's multi-directional. What comes in goes out, and it's a continuous exchange.
Interacting with each other.
Yes, I need to balance and enhance each skill. If you focus solely on one, it limits your language development. These skills are all interconnected.
Exactly. Just speaking more won't help. You'll end up using patterned English.
It's not that straightforward. What you learn from one medium isn't limited to that skill. Reading, for instance, helps expand your vocabulary, which aids listening comprehension.
Right, they all complement each other.
Absolutely. Even slang has its place, although I don't encourage using it.
True.
People often pick up swear words and slang quickly.
It's usually the first things they learn.
By the way, I was watching a very popular series called Prison Break.
Oh, I know that one.
I actually watched all of season 2 in 48 hours. I stayed up all night.
Yeah, you can't stop watching it.
And then I go to class the next day, and all I can think about is swearing. I mean, it's really like, Leah, but we are both avid learners. So it's not like we are conducting experiments on others. We're experimenting with ourselves and observing the results.
And that's why we created our channel. We are collecting what we've learned as EFL speakers, what worked for us, and sharing it with others.
Yes, it's essentially about sharing our experiences and strategies that have proven effective for us as language learners. It should be beneficial to those in similar situations.
Regarding journaling, you mentioned an extensive approach and an intensive approach.
Right. And there is also writing. When you're reading extensively, it becomes input, and at some point, it becomes output.
Yes, I think actively maintaining an expression notebook is crucial. When you come across phrases or expressions, note them down and try to incorporate them into sentences that fit your context. It's not about copying someone else's sentence verbatim, it should reflect your own story.
Absolutely. And for vocabulary, do you have a specific method you used or still use?
In the past, I used to write down words and look up their definitions, but now there are various tools available.
There is a wealth of resources.
For instance, I use Obsidian. When I read articles, I copy the link, read it there, and highlight words or phrases that I find interesting.
That's a practical approach. I used to look at words in electronic dictionaries, but I prefer physical dictionaries because they provide definitions, example sentences, derivations, and more. I read and look up words simultaneously, gradually darkening the highlighted words as I learn them. This way, the first time I encounter a word is highlighted lightly. With each subsequent encounter, the highlighting becomes darker. By the time the highlight is no longer visible, I've learned the word. Eventually, I add these words to my vocabulary list for periodic self-quizzing. I can only quiz myself on words I've collected. This helps me assess my memorization progress. And nowadays, I spend a lot of time commuting between schools. While on the train, I review vocabulary, flipping through the ones I remember and jotting down the ones I don't. I prefer this method to constantly staring at my phone.
I used to use an app called Biscuit years ago. It allowed you to create your own vocabulary and view it as flashcards. Unfortunately, it's no longer available. Before I started using Obsidian, I was more into handwriting. I liked jotting things down. So I maintain a Moleskine book journal where I allocate one page after finishing a book. I don't follow a strict organization. Instead, I jot down phrases, paragraphs, or sentences I find particularly appealing. I took the phrases that really stuck with me and transcribed them.
That's good. It's like making an imprint.
It piles up, and when I revisit it later, I remember why I liked that book.
It serves as a reminder. Speaking of memorable phrases, I'm watching a movie right now, and there was a sentence that really stuck me.
What is it?
It's very simple. It's from Jerry Maguire, a young Tom Cruise. It's a straightforward phrase, but it's one of my favorite romantic phrases. You complete me.
You complete me?
That's right, that phrase.
I didn't realize that was from that movie.
Yeah, it's from Jerry Maguire. You complete me. It's stuck in my mind. I have a bad memory. I forget many things, but that verb complete in you complete me is so perfect and romantic.
More powerful than I love you.
Exactly. Complete, the word complete isn't an emotion word, but the emotion it conveys is so profound that it really hits you. It made me realize the incredible power of language, and that English is uniquely delightful when read in English. That's why I felt that way. If you translate it into Korean, 너는 나를 완성시켜.
It doesn't have the same impact.
Exactly. There's something special about English. I don't know how to describe it. It's so simple, just 3 words, but that's where I fell in love with the English language. That's why I realized the importance of reading English novels. Korean has its beauty and simplicity in expressing emotions. It varies depending on the context.
Indeed.
But each language has its unique flavor, and you can only fully appreciate it by reading or listening to it in that language, not through translation. That's why translating is challenging. Being proficient in English doesn't automatically make you a good translator. To be an excellent translator, you need to be highly proficient in both the source and target languages. So if I'm not a translator, I'd rather immerse myself in reading and listening to capture that true emotion.
Mm. That's one of the reasons why immersion is such an effective way to learn a language.
Absolutely.
I usually do this when I come across a book advertised as a Korean translation of something interesting. I'll visit Kyobo bookstore and check if the original book is in English first.
To see if it is?
Yeah, then I get the original and look at it first.
Yeah. I look at the English version first. I also tend to look at other languages because I can't resist it. Now I check out the Korean translation and even read reviews in other languages. For example, if it's a French book, I'd look for reviews from people who read it in French. It helps me understand if there were any peculiar translations or unique interpretations. It's like once you get a taste of a language, you crave the flavors of other languages.
True.
But it can be challenging to dive into new languages. Currently, I'm trying Spanish and French, still using Duolingo. It's basic, like, how are you? Fine, thank you. That's my level for now.
Well, at least it's useful for traveling.
Yes, and I get to hear it. For speaking practice, I use apps like Duolingo. I admit I'm not great at speaking, but Duolingo helps.
It's a low barrier to entry.
Indeed, it's easy to get started with Duolingo. You can practice sentence by sentence and even correct pronunciation. It's probably the best free app for beginners like me to learn another language. I highly recommend Duolingo.
That's good to know.
It has become a habit for me. I do it consistently.
But it can get a bit monotonous.
True. It involves a lot of repetition. When it gets boring, I take a break and then go back to it. Learning a language is like learning to play the piano or ride a bike. Once you reach a certain level, you don't completely forget it, even if you don't practice regularly. You might get a bit rusty, but you're not starting from scratch.
You can't revert to a zero base.
Exactly. You might get rusty, but you can't become a complete beginner again. It's like you've built a foundation.
I think that's important. You can't go back to square one even if you tried.
And cramming during vacation and then neglecting it during the semester doesn't help.
True, consistency is key, even if it's just about 5 or 10 minutes a day. With so much short-form content and distractions nowadays, it's hard to focus for a long time. For example, Instagram has 30-second or 1-minute videos. They don't build that concentration muscle.
No, language is a muscle.
So when choosing content, don't go for something too short. Don't assume you're done just because you watched a brief video. Choose content that's at least 10 minutes long. Even if you're listening, make it a substantial amount. For reading, I started with 1 page a day. If you do that consistently, you can gradually increase it. Start with 1 page, then 2 pages, and so on. It's not just about learning a foreign language, it's about building the muscle to concentrate effectively on any task.
Exactly. It's about developing that ability, and learning is like building a muscle. You don't start with lifting heavy weights, you start with lighter ones and gradually increase. It's the same with language or any skill.
You build it up incrementally.
And it becomes a habit.
Yeah, repetition is important. Even if it's every 3 days or every other day, don't break the chain.
Yes, exactly. Consistency is the key.
It's like maintaining momentum, even if it's every other day.
Yes, even every 3 days, as long as you keep it going, it forms a routine. We are almost done here. So if you have more topics you'd like us to discuss, feel free to suggest them.
Absolutely. If there are specific topics you'd like us to cover, please let us know.
We'd be happy to explore those in future discussions. Okay, I am signing off for today. Bye, everyone.
Bye. See ya.